Hey y'all, Monk Joseph here with the Broken Buddha. Alright, so today we're going to talk about Buddhism for our episode 2 of the Religious Antithesis series. And I'm going to dive right in. So Siddhartha Gautama is the Buddha we'll be talking about. Yes, there's more than one. I would argue there's like infinite Buddhas, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Let's just talk about the path and the journey because a lot of people don't understand A, how to follow sages, and B, what that sage did, right? So when you talk about what sages do and which ones to follow and how, you know, um, Siddhartha Gautama was a prince who fulfilled every single desire that you could possibly imagine, and then realized that he would one day get sick and die. It triggered a, extreme dogmatic psychosis that led him to just drop everything and run into figuring out how to solve this suffering and pain within himself. And a lot of people do find their enlightenment through their own pain and hardship and perseverance. Um, so that's that. And I'm not going to say that if you're not a prince or royalty or rich person who pursued every desire, that you shouldn't practice Buddhism, but that's what that was. And I think you have a much better chance if you're trying to follow him to a T. You have a much better chance if you are, rich or royalty and already fulfilled every desire, and you're here watching this, like, what do I do? Oh, I found Monk Joseph. Maybe I go there. And that's the same thing that Siddhartha Gautama did. He went and found other yogis, gurus, and uh, followed the path until he found his own way and his own enlightenment. Um, there's also like a million different kinds of Buddhism, and I'm going to pick some of them apart too because they're not Buddhism in my opinion. Um, where do we start? Let's start with one of my cores, which would be Chan or Zen Buddhism. That is a wonderful way. Paying attention is always the core of Buddhism. That if you could sum up Buddhism into two words, pay attention. And that's where a lot of the issues arise in life is from you not actually paying attention to what's going on around you, what this existence is. Beyond that, it would be don't chase, I guess, desire. Because even anger is a desire not to feel that way or not to have that thing in front of you. And when you're discomforted, like right now, if you're uncomfortable because you don't like what I'm saying, you desire not to watch this, so you should turn it off. But you may keep watching it because you like being uncomfortable and you haven't realized that it's trying to teach you something and you want to own your pain and discomfort. So there's that. It really is more complex, people tell you, and you'll see that by the time I'm done. I'm going to say, I got to do, it's the Antithesis series. So why mainstream religion isn't the actual religion. So when you're talking about Chan or Zen, it comes from one of Damo's disciples. Damo was the second abbot of the Shaolin Temple, or also known as Bodhidharma, and he his first student Huke technically actually created Zen or Chan, and it's okay to follow his lessons because I think I'm sure he did the best he could, and so did his students after him. But the fact of the matter is, Damo saw that the guy was unteachable. I mean, it's not that the guy was unteachable. Enlightenment almost happens by accident. You're being put in the positions, you're being able to understand it, your ability to be able to go through it all the way until the end. Like all these things are based in karma, meaning that not only is it's not karma's not some magical concept that's going to fix everything for you or means that you're a good or bad person. Especially in modern times, it's more like if you go around manipulating people, then one day some Buddha might actually come up and help you, and you're going to be like, oh, he's trying to manipulate me because he seems smart, and I would manipulate me if I was him. You see what I'm saying? It's not as simple as just saying you did something wrong. You did it to yourself. You put yourself in this box or this hole. All right, so back to Zen or Chan. So what you're actually studying is Huke's understanding of what he saw Damo go through. That's what Zen or Chan Buddhism is. What Damo practiced was cave yogi Buddhism, more specifically Mahayana wall staring, which after you experience realization or self-realization, you understand that everything is like a reflection, a reflection on a living movie screen and projector. That is, you're the one projecting it, but it's also not you projecting it. It's very complex. But the point is, you're pretty much staring at a wall right now, and you just don't understand that, and you're not capable of understanding that. Like Dzogchen Buddhism, you can only study Dzogchen Buddhism if you haven't had the visions, because if I tell you to go stare at a wall and then leave and pretend you're staring at a wall, you're just pretending you're staring at a wall. You don't know it. You're just doing a thing that somebody told you to because you thought it would help you. Um, so that's what Damo actually did. And then what Huke did when he created Zen or Chan was his understanding of that. So if you're studying Zen or Chan Buddhism, and I would argue that you're not studying Buddhism, you're studying Huge's interpretation of Buddhism without actually experiencing. Maybe he did by the end of his life. Maybe Dhamma helped him get there. I don't know. I'm not him. I can't speak for him. All right, so that covers that one. What else we got here? Siddhartha Gautama Buddha was actually very interesting in the sense that I've watched a bunch of documentaries about him, and one of my favorite pieces that I've seen repeated is like one of his first or second gurus told him that he needed to look within to find his enlightenment, and he left that guru and then traveled for years and years and years and years and years. And this is what we were talking about with karma a minute ago. And eventually, when he did find it, he realized that after many, many years, many, many gurus, and much practice, he learned that he needed to look within because that's where it was. And that always trips me out because even Buddha had his hang-ups when he was studying. He wasn't enlightened the whole time. He was enlightened after he achieved enlightenment. So there were flaws and things that happened before then. Buddha means the awakened one. So if you're studying Buddhism, you're studying the path of the awakened one, not Siddhartha Gautama, all awakened ones. And this is why I argue that every religion is technically Buddhism, is philosophically Buddhism. If you're trying to find something within yourself and awaken yourself spiritually, and so if you're studying Christianity in the sense of finding yourself spiritually and awakening spiritually, you're practicing Buddhism. Any religion, if you're using Islam for that purpose, if you're using Hinduism for that purpose, if you're using Sikhism for that purpose, if you're using anything to awaken yourself consciously and spiritually, you're practicing Buddhism. And it's that simple. And that's what Buddhism is that path and study of that. Let's see what else. There are many other Buddhas. So I will touch on Bon Buddhism for a minute. Bon Buddhism is like, in my opinion, one of the oldest and purest forms of Buddhism. If you're studying the Dzogchen cave yogi principles, you may need some elemental retrieval in your life if you had some really crazy traumatic stuff and you didn't have the life of Siddhartha Gautama. What else? There's so much in there. There is a ton of stuff in Bon. And I will also say that if you're studying Buddhism, you got to understand, you think Christianity's capitalism bad? Buddhism's capitalism was around an extra 500 years before Yeshua or Jesus even existed. So their capitalism is completely out of control. That's why there's a million different types, a million people faking it, sitting here like, hey, yeah, I know Buddhism. Come on, give me some money. I know Buddhism. And that's really how it got out of control. Everybody who studies Buddhism knows that there are so many fake sutras, whether it's Sanskrit, Tibetan, English. There are a lot of fake sutras and information out there. Like, look at Om Mani Padme Hum. It's not that simple. You connect with the Om. The Mani is the jewel inside your mind. The lotus is your life or your body and brain itself. And then Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, is a vibration to your pineal gland. But people write books on this. And I just told you everything that exists or really you need to know about the Om Mani Padme Hum. But people have really made a ton of money off of this. So there's that. And then, let me think, what else we got? So I've covered Tibetan Buddhism. Let's go there. So Tibetan Buddhism was started by Shantarak first, then Padmasambhava. Batuo technically started the Shaolin Temple, but everybody knows Damo because he brought the realization and the experience of enlightenment. Shantarak started Tibetan Buddhism, but Padmasambhava was the one who came there with the real enlightenment and did some things and stuff. And there's a common misconception that every Tibetan Lama or every Tibetan Geshe is enlightened. I'll tell you for a fact that I've never met a Geshe or a Lama that's had experienced realization or enlightenment. And that's my experience as a fact. Because when I had an experience, you're supposed to go, verify it with somebody. And there's no one to verify it with. The Lama, the nun/Lama that I was mentoring under, when I told her, she got really weird and jealous and dogmatically borderline psychotic, and our relationship ended. And then I contacted a very famous Bumpo Geshe, and me and him are still friends because, like I said in the one video with religious debate with me and clergy, when we come to a draw, we end up being good friends. And me and him are still good friends. But he himself had not accomplished realization. So you would think that the highest ends of Tibetan Buddhism or Bon Buddhism have accomplished realization or enlightenment, but I'm telling you, they told me they haven't. They either showed me they hadn't through psychotic dogmatic reaction, or they flat out told me, no, I did not experience that. And I had wonderful debates with him about this. I'm sure you can imagine. Okay, so what else are we? It is a very complex thing. So if you stayed on this long, I commend you. This is a very complex topic. And again, it's the Antithesis series. So let's go back to when I said enlightenment was like an accident. The reason why it's so difficult in Buddhism is because when somebody attains enlightenment, you know, myself attaining what I attained as well, you realize that it's an accident. Like, no, there is nothing. If you told me to tell you, hey, what did you do so I can do it? I can't give you like a childhood that you would understand as true hell, or the ignorance coming out of it for like almost 40 years. Like, I can't. How am I supposed to teach that? Like, it's not teachable. So that's why Damo was like to Huke, like, dude, like you can't. You're chasing desire. You're here to study enlightenment because you're chasing desire, and that's why it's so unteachable. So yeah, Tibetan Buddhism, they will not guide you to enlightenment. They can give you practices to help you guide yourself there, but nobody there can tell you to get to enlightenment because they're not there, and I know that. So Chan Buddhism was created by a guy who did not understand Buddhism and who was told he would never attain enlightenment and could not attain enlightenment. From the story, if you look at it, Dhammo took him under his wing out of pity. And I'm not knocking it, man. I've learned from Zen Buddhism, really immerse yourself in what you're doing every day. But the mission is not to, wash your bowl with your finger or step like this or carry water like this. The point is to pay very close attention, very, 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 very close attention, and stay calm so you can pay close attention. That's Zen or Chan Buddhism. But these days you have like Zen pillows and Zen ramen bowls, and it's got, like I said, it's completely commercialized. Um, so I covered Zen Chen, I covered Tibetan Buddhism, I covered Bon Buddhism. Um, and by the way, Zen or Chan did give me a little bit, but I'd say I got the least out of my training from Zen or Chan. I got the most of my training from Tibetan Buddhism, more specifically taking that all the way back to Shaktiism. Actually, and the Bon Buddhism is closer to Shaktiism than Tibetan Buddhism. So I actually followed Bon Buddhism all the way back to Shaktiism. And I'll give you a big secret here since you lasted this long. The reason why the three channels in Tibetan Buddhism are different than Bon Buddhism is because Tibet, being so close to China, has that newer five elements concept of, what is it? Of, your right side is your male or yang, your left side is your yin or female. So that's why you have the red yang and the white yin, or red masculine and white feminine. In Bon, being a goddess-based original religion, goes all the way back to Shaktiism. Now, Shaktiism states that your masculine is white on the right side and your feminine is red. And I do have my theory for that it has more to do with what these sexual organs were expelling. I'll put it out there like that. It's a little uncomfortable topic, but that's what I think. I mean, you're talking 20,000 years ago, man. They didn't understand. They were like, what's the difference? This, that. They were able to feel out that one side was different than the other, and they assigned it as such. And that is my personal theory about that. But that's why they're different, because they came, one's 20,000 years old, and one is like 1,300 years old ish. Actually, like 1,200. We'll say 1,300 because there were some people doing stuff back then. So that's why and stuff like that. And if you were to ask, like, I'm sure that some of the Bumpos or Tibetan Buddhists will see this and now they'll know. But when I went through my training and asked the top Sa Lung Troll core guy in the world, oh, you must reach for the non-conceptual. You must reach for the non-conceptual. He didn't know, and I actually hit him up recently to see if he wanted to know. Nothing, dude. Crickets. And you got to watch that in Buddhism because a lot of people are going to talk you in circles because they don't want to lose that money, they don't want to lose the attention, and they don't want to lose their ego because despite the fact that they're supposed to be dropping their ego and studying Buddhism, they need that ego to keep making money and to keep people, yeah, no, you just need to follow me. You don't know what you're talking about. You just need to keep reaching for the non-conceptual, and that's the realities of what you'll experience. I experience the same thing in yoga and qigong. People think that these yoga teachers and qigong teachers, you ask them a question and they talk you in circles, and you're like, that doesn't make sense. And they're like, no, you do not understand. Like, they don't understand. And actually, I would say, I did a video on this before, the age of degeneration in the Kali Yuga. This is definitely, like, we're definitely in some form of age of degeneration, according to what Buddhism would say, because you can't get verified. The lamas and geishas don't know. The qigong and yoga instructors don't know. And that's the reality of what you're going to experience in Buddhism. So let's see what else we got. I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up. You really got to follow your heart, pay attention, The last thing I'll say about Buddhism is this. One thing you learn in Buddhism is that ethics are not some like benevolent, just be good to people. Just be good to people. It's not that simple. The people in Buddhism, going all the way back, they realized that ethics is almost, if this is like a, not if, this being a learning simulation similar to the idea of logos, but with more compassion and non-conceptual ability to understand it. Like, you can't understand it. I'll just put it like that. If it's learning, I don't like to use the word learning simulation because it seems under the idea of God, but it's like way, 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 way beyond all understanding until you hit enlightenment. When you hit enlightenment, then you're going to be like, oh, crap, that was all an accident, and whoa. So, but the ethics are more of a program reflex that they notice. Like, oh, if I do this, I'll get this enlightenment reflex eventually. And I would imagine like the first, primordial Buddhas, as they would call them, were able to understand this after they did it. Like they probably, if they were anything like me, they just couldn't stand the state of things and the way people were treating each other. And you just like, I'd rather die than be nasty or convert my mind to this garbage that people treat each other. And eventually they attained enlightenment and was like, oh, that was all a compassionate learning simulation. Okay, okay, wow, maybe I should like go tell somebody about this. And then again, it's pretty much an accident, so it's unteachable. But we still got it, man. We still got it. Whoever sent the Vedas through time to catalyze enlightenment at a later stage, when we'd be able to find it again, either through intelligence or altruism, or stop chasing desire, whatever it is that caused us to stop that they knew of. Whoever sent that, like, it worked. It worked, and it's brilliant. And there are multiple enlightened beings. There are other enlightened beings out there, even to this day. So I mean, if you are studying, I can assure you 100%, 100% that there are enlightened beings out there, and there are more than one. So it's not this concept of like only one pops up. And the biggest thing you got to get away from is people thinking that they're different types of divine beings. No, we are all on this same playing field as consciousness and as beings that can become what you would understand as divine, but it's really just, you either make it through the learning simulation or you don't. And as far as the after effect, I mean, people don't understand the infinite possibilities of an afterlife. When you study Tibetan Buddhism and Bon, you will understand the potentials. And I don't want to say that there are horrors that you can experience. I mean, look at the Tibetan hot and cold hells. I mean, you probably never thought of being stuck in an existence that's like the top of the Himalayas, where you touch something that's so cold that your skin falls off, and then and then that skin falls off, and then you respawn, and you're like, what the heck? And then you do it again and again and again. So the ideas of an infinite experiences after you die, I'm not going to call it heaven or hell because I don't like fear mongering. I think fear mongering is garbage. Is there, and when you study that, you'll see that. So yeah, the video is a little more long-winded than I wanted it to be, but like I said in the beginning, it's a lot to unpack, guys. You can't just go in there and be like, I will sit with my hands on my legs crossed and my eyes closed, and I'll attain enlightenment today. Like, no, if you didn't have a horrible enough, what is it? There's a saying in Buddhism and enlightenment culture, no mud, no lotus. If you didn't experience enough mud in life, you're not getting your lotus open. It's just not going to happen. And or if you're not able to realize that you did experience that much mud because your ego's in the way, like, no, I superseded everything, I'm more powerful than that, you'll never accomplish Buddhism. Or if you think that you're going to attain some amazing type of control or superpower, and that's what you think enlightenment or Buddhism is, you will never accomplish Buddhism, period. I'm telling you right now. Yeah. If you think it's a mindfulness thing, or it's just like a awakening that's not an actual experience, you're never going to attain Buddhism. That's probably my favorite one, that people think like, oh no, you just have to think peaceful thoughts. And if you can think peaceful thoughts all the time, then you're enlightened. No, it's an actual experience. You will actually have a specific series of visions that everybody has, the exact same experience of visions. You'll have the exact same aftermath and the exact same coming of full enlightenment. And don't reach too soon. Just because you have the visions or think you had the visions does not mean you did. You have to go all the way, even after your realization visions, self-realization visions, which technically dictate that you'll accomplish it in this life or right as soon as you die. But do not like jump into what you were doing before, because look up a story called a guy named the Rudra Black Liberation, who eventually became Chagdrupa. He jumped the gun thinking that he achieved realization and was able to do anything except for lie. Because after self-realization, you can do anything you want except for tell a lie. And he went all in, And you just look up the story. It's freaking brutal what that guy did to existence, and then what happened to him to attain enlightenment, and what his, you know, followers do now to have to attain enlightenment. I'm not going to tell you. That's a story you got to look up for yourself. All right, so that'll wrap it up. That's everything I know about Buddhism that I can say in 20 minutes. Don't be fooled. Don't let people talk you in circles. Just, keep your heart pure, especially in the darkest of darkness, man. I don't care how dark you think you got it. Trust me, we've all been there if you're studying Buddhism, and we've all seen it that dark. It is that dark. And as long as you keep your heart pure, which I don't know how much of that was a choice. Like I said, it seems more like an accident when you experience it. Than anything. But yeah, it's a very, very complex thing to go through and to accomplish. All right. So that's all. If you stayed on this long, you are now an expert in Buddhism more than probably every lama, geisha, or yogi that you'll ever meet, because they really just don't know, and they're just like everybody else in samsara, looking to try to understand nirvana. And most of them get out too early for the sake of their egos. It is what it is. All right. So thank you for stopping by, the Broken Buddha. I hope you enjoyed this video. Peace and blessings.